9.2. Solving quadratic equation by completing the square method. So the completing square method is one of the methods that we use for the quadratic equation that are not factorable and not applicable by square root property. So the process is, first we're going to rewrite the quadratic equations into x squared plus bx equal to c format first, with, this is very important, the leading coefficients to be 1. So you need to make sure that is 1. Because only if that is 1, then the formula in the second step will work. So to complete the left-hand side, complete the square on the left-hand side, which is trying to get a perfect square trinomial, we add the number b divided by 2 squared to both sides. And once we get this complete perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side, we're going to write it in terms of a binomial square. So which will lead us to use the square root property from the previous sections. So let's take a look at on the first example. So first step, I'm going to try to make sure that my leading coefficient is 1. So it is already. So the next step will be, what? Rewrite it into the form that I talk about in step 1. So which will be y squared minus 10y, and I subtract 35 to both sides. Now, to complete the square, I need to add a number, which means I want to make sure that I get a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side. So to get a perfect square trinomial, I need to add a number. So the number can be looked for by this formula. And I want you to write down step by step on this part, because I will point out an easy way to get the factor quickly. So b divided by 2 squaring it, that is basically negative 10 divided by 2 squared, which is negative 5 squared. That gives me 25. So now we know that the number that we need to add to make a perfect square trinomial on the left hand side is 25. So when I added 25, now I add 25 to the left hand side and to the right hand side to make it equivalent equations. So the left hand side, notice that y squared minus 10y plus 25, it has the same factor twice, which is y minus 5 to the second power. Write it into a quantity square form. That is equal to negative 10. Now, from this step on, we can see that we can use square root property, right? Because we have a square term by itself on one side and a number on the other side. So taking the square root on both sides, don't forget plus or minus. This gives me y minus 5 square root of it equal to plus or minus square root of negative 10, which now give us y minus 5 is equal to plus or minus square root of 10i. I cannot simplify it. And to finish solving it, we need to add 5 to both sides. So I add 5 to both sides. And since this is a complex number, right away I'm going to try to write it in a standard form. So finally, I got my solutions for this, which is 5 minus square root of 10i, and then 5 plus square root of 10i. Let's take a look at on the next example. So first up, I'm going to try to get my leading coefficients 1. So that means I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So which give me m squared plus 8m plus 7 is equal to 0. And I particularly ask you to use the completing the square method. So I need to rewrite into the variable terms on one side and a number on the other side by subtracting 7 to both sides. Now I need to find out a number that I need to add it on the left hand side to make a perfect square trinomial. So according to the formula, if I take b divided by 2 and then square it, that will give me the number. My b in this case is a positive 8 divided by 2 and square it, which will give me 4 square, that is 16. So now we know we need to add 16 to the left hand side, and we need to add 16 to the right hand side. Which gives me, but on the left hand side, that becomes a perfect square trinomial, which is going to be m plus 4 quantity square is equal to 9. Now, it also gives us the format of square root property is applicable. So we take the square root on both sides. That will become m plus 4 square is equal to plus or minus square root of 9, which is m plus 4 is equal to plus or minus 3. That allows us to finish up this problem by subtracting 4 on both sides. So m is equal to minus 4 plus or minus 3. And we know that plus or minus is basically talking about two cases. So from here, I can see that m is equal to minus 4 plus 3, or m is equal to minus 4 minus 3, which is negative 1 and negative 7. So my final answer will be negative 7 comma negative 1. Since we do two problems already, let me point out how I got my factors very quickly and why I want you to write my side work step by step. From here to here, I got my factor very quickly. One, because I can factor quick, and I believe that you did practice it and you can factor quickly also. Second, the factor will be always the number that before we square in it. See that? Y minus 5 square. And look at on the other example. It's also what? M plus 4. Because we made that to be. Right? So that's the little trick that you can use. For the integers, you don't have a problem factoring, but we will run into fractions, and this will be very useful. Okay? Which is like in this example. So first, I'm going to try to get my leading coefficients 1, so therefore I divided by 3 on all the terms. So this will become r squared minus 2 over 3r minus 7 is equal to 0. Writing the variable terms on one side and a number on the other side by adding 7 to both sides. And now we need to add a number to make a perfect square trinomial on the left hand side. And this will, the formula will allow us to find that out. So the formula that we have is b divided by 2 and then squaring it. In this case, my b is negative 2 over 3 divided by 2. So that's basically saying negative 2 over 3 times with, I can look at it as 2 over 1 and a reciprocal, right? Dividing is multiplying by reciprocal. So this will give me 2 and 2 reduce it, so it will be negative 1 over 3 square. And when I square it, it'll become 1 over 9. Now we found out that what number we need to add to both sides. So I add 1 over 9 to both sides. And here is the problematic part. Because factoring with an integer is very easy, but factoring with the fractions, it will be very slightly difficult. So to make it fast, you need to remember this, because we make the left-hand side to be a perfect square trinomial. Therefore, we know what is the factors going to be. The factor will be always the number before we square in it. So therefore, quickly I can say that my factor will be r minus 1 over 3 square. That is equal to 7 plus 1 over 9. That will give me 64 over 9. Because I basically, you know, do mentally. You can use calculator or you can do by hand. 7 over 1 plus 1 over 9. So when I multiply top and bottom by 9, that will be 63 over 9. So it's just 64 over what? 9. Okay. Now we can use the square root property to take the square root on both sides. So square root and plus or minus square root. Don't forget plus or minus sign. Of r minus 1/3 square equal to 64 over 9. So which give us r minus 1/3 is equal to plus or minus 8 over 3. Now continuing this by subtracting both sides, right? Let me erase a little bit on this part. Subtracting both sides by 1/3, adding both sides by 1/3, so it'll be r is equal to 1/3 plus or minus 8 over 3. So which is, now we see that r is equal to 1/3 plus 8 over 3, or r is equal to 1/3 minus 8 over 3. So we got 9 over 3, which is equal to 3, or negative 7 over 3. So I have two solutions, negative 7 over 3, and then what? 3 is my final answer. Let's try the last example. So first, for this problem, I'm going to have to multiply my left-hand side, and then try to put it into the format that we need. So when I FOIL it, this will become c squared plus 8c minus 2c minus 16 equal to 11. So which is c squared plus 6c minus 16 equal to 11. So adding 16 to both sides, that gives me 27. Now I need to find out which number I need to add to make the left-hand side perfect square trinomial. So the formula said that b divided by 2 and then square it. And this formula will work if my leading coefficient is 1, which we already get that. So my b in this case is 6. So when I divide it by 2, that will be 3 squared, which is 9. Now we know that we need to add 9 to both sides of equations. So c squared plus 6c plus 9 equal to 27 plus 9. In the left-hand side, we know that the factor will be c plus 3 squared equal to 36. Now we use the square root property to take the square root on both sides. Don't forget plus or minus sign. So this will be c plus 3 squared equal to 36. So therefore, c plus 3 is equal to plus or minus 6. And I got my c by subtracting 3 to both sides. So finally, I got c is equal to negative 3 minus 6, and c is equal to negative 3 plus 6, because plus or minus is talking about two cases. So we can, simplify each case, and then my final answer is -9 and 3. And this concludes the sessions